If there's two things that Hank loves in this world, it's beer and propane. Yes, I do suppose Peggy as well, but that's not exactly what we're talking about here. Oh, and yes, he loves his son too.
I knew you since you were in diapers, and you was always a total loser. Clumsy fat loser. Hey!
Hey folks, welcome to Squirrel Tactics. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Check out our Patreon, our sister channel, our merch store, and we have another new top tier patron this week. So, Adam Va, this one's for you.
Alright. Someone's insane. Look out, someone's insane.
I got my eye on you, nutcase.
Alright, let's get into it. The Beer Story. Fun fact, the original working title for Good Hill Hunting was The Deer Story, and it's interesting that both episodes are about Hank and Bobby eventually bonding, though they get there in a rather family circus style way. It's also another example of an episode where Hank and Bobby could use a situation to bond, but instead it goes awry. We see examples of this in Now Who's the Dummy?
Dad, I'm starting to get a ventriloquist tan.
No one likes a whiner, Bobby. Right, Chip?
Right.
Of Mice and Little Green Men.
It turns out that Mr. Gribble is one of Arlen's great acting rehearsers, and he's willing to work with you.
Oh, okay.
So we're doing Of Mice and Men, huh? I saw the dinner theater version of it. The roast beef was fantastic.
And very much Dancing with Dogs.
You're dancing with the neighbor's dog. Go dance at the neighbor's.
Come on.
Leave or I'll call the pound.
You're scared, old man. You're scared of my moves.
The episode starts off with Hank waking up at 5 a.m. even though he's retired. I'm guessing he uses an alarm rather than his body just naturally waking up due to his internal clock still getting back on Texas time. For those that might be wondering, Saudi Arabia is 8 hours ahead of the central time zone, which is where Texas is except for 2 counties. What matters is that Hank keeps getting up at dawn even though he's retired, and it also wakes up Peggy, which I can understand would be irritating. He may be wanting to get up, but she's trying to sleep.
Honey, you do not need to get up at the crack of dawn every morning.
Peggy, I didn't retire to sleep my life away like some Nepo baby.
Yeah, I still don't think he'd say Nepo baby, but whatever. My big issue here is, why is Hank retired? We're talking about the same guy that said this.
Well, I sure do have the time. This whole not working thing is gonna give me a heart attack, I tell you what. God, that'd be embarrassing. Hank Hill found dead not working.
So what changed? What happened to cause that change? I'm not complaining, I'm just legitimately interested in the answer. Why did Hank leave Strickland? Why doesn't Hank get a job? He can always go back into propane since it's something he loves. And I'm sure he could find something local that would easily meet his needs. Anywho, Hank is bored because he has nothing to do, and he ends up watching a legacy sequel of Monsignor Martinez. This time it's his son, and I figure that this is a subtle nod to the revival itself. And yes, I have to point out that it doesn't make any sense for Peggy to mispronounce the character's name.
Oh, are they showing reruns of Monsignor Martinez?
She has said it correctly plenty of times.
The real Monsignor Martinez!
Hell, she lived in the man's house. Thought that he fell in love with her. Pretty sure she got a peek at his bishop when he was in the shower.
Hey, Senora Hill, what in God's name are you doing?
Stop playing coy with me, Eduardo.
I must insist that you leave, Senora.
So yeah, she should be saying that properly. Anything else, yeah, all bets are off. That's Peggy. You either love her or you hate her, but she ain't changing for nobody, and I dig that. She gets a translation way wrong here, claiming that he's threatening to come back and kill them, when in fact, according to the subtitles and the entire Latin world, he's wishing them a Merry Christmas. So wing and a miss there, Peggy, but you know, she was always known for her pitching, not so much her hitting. She gives Hank a list of things that she needs from Megalo Mart, who really hasn't changed a whole lot because store never changes. I do find it interesting that they're a play on Walmart, but they have Target buggies. Hank is looking for bath mats and asks an associate where they are, and then he gets irritated by how the whole thing plays out. Now he asks one associate who doesn't know, so she asks a guy nearby who checks on his work phone to see if they carry it and what the location is. Again, this place is based off Walmart. Walmart gives their associates work phones to do a lot of tasks with, which include looking up item locations. locations. Hank doesn't know this, then again he probably expects them to know right off the top of their head where every item in the store is, which is not realistic at all, and that's asking a lot considering it changes quite a bit due to new planograms, or mods in Walmart speak. Also, a lot of items have moved to online only, so sorry Hank, you're kinda in the wrong in my opinion. I get being irritated, but they are trying to help you. All that being said, the sales guy is kind of a jerk afterward when Hank comes across a home brewing kit. I do love the Chuck and Snoop Dogg partnership there. Never forget that Snoop Dogg voiced Alabaster back in Oh Yeah.
Can I help you?
Allow me to, introduce myself. Alabaster Jones, the main Mac Daddy of Oklahoma City. Miss Tammy Duvall works for me.
Also, this made me think of Dan Halen for some reason. Maybe it's the use of drank instead of drink.
Erupt into a beverage this summer with glug. That's the slogan. We'll add the word dog for the blacks. They like that word, like they're friends with the product.
But it was also the associate who pointed out that it used propane, which immediately got Hank's attention because of course it did.
It puts together my two loves, beer and propane.
Well, that's after your first love, me.
Uh-huh.
Bobby comes by with some laundry. Hey, free food. I don't blame him. And Peggy tells him about Hank getting into beer brewing. Now, I like adult Bobby, but in his interaction with Hank here, he comes off rather condescending. Yes, there is quite a bit to learn as it pertains to brewing beer. It is an art form. But Bobby kind of talks down to Hank here, giving off an air of, okay, boomer.
My beer has hops.
Yep, it sure does, Dad. All beer has hops, and bread has wheat, and candy has sugar.
Peggy wants the two of them to brew together, seeing as Bobby has dealt with beer through his restaurant and knows a decent amount about it. She wants them to use it as a way to help the two bond, but more than that, it's to get a beer named after her, which, yeah, that ain't gonna happen here, Peggy. I appreciate the high hopes, but it ain't happening. Hank and Bobby try one of Hank's beers, and Bobby is not exactly impressed. He calls it boring because it tastes like Alamo, telling Hank that beers are supposed to taste bolder and be better than the stuff he's been drinking for 40 years. Better was not the right word to use because taste is subjective. Does Bobby prefer more modern, fuller flavor beers? Sure, and that's cool, but it doesn't make them better than good old Alamo. And I think Hank is very much taking the attack on his beer as an attack on him, and to an extent his way of life. Much of the revival is about Hank dealing with a world that has moved on, not so much in the Dark Tower sense, but more in the way that I talked about in the Cotton video. And again, Bobby comes off, not on purpose by the way, as dismissive and condescending. This is why Hank wants to get the guys to try out his beer to prove that his beer made his way and representing how he believes that beer should taste is still good. And the guys all love it, the only ones who aren't big fans being Bobby and Joseph, so yeah, definitely a generational gap there. Something I want to point out here that a lot of people have drawn attention to is Bill and his sudden change in appearance. Remember, Bill was more or less a hermit that let himself go, but by the end of the episode was much slimmer.
Y'all realize he's butt naked under that shirt, right?
Yep.
Yup.
Mm-hmm.
And he's even more slimmed down here. Yeah, he did have quite the body transformation in a short amount of time. However, to be fair, this is the same show that had Peggy go from being in a body cast after her parachute failed to open.
What are you on your knees for, woman? Praying ain't gonna help. If God loved you, he'd have opened your sissy chute.
To walking around and winning Substitute Teacher of the Year in like 4 episodes and 2 in-universe months.
I fell out of a plane, and just 2 months later, I have landed on my feet.
So it's really not that far out there. Brian mentions that there's a homebrew competition coming up in Dallas and that they should enter. However, due to not being impressed with Hank's beer, Bobby refuses to work with him because he doesn't want to damage his reputation by offering something up that he deems to be boring and out of date. Now, the difference in beer preference here, I think, can be boiled down to 2 things. First is generational, the second is situational. Generational, it comes down to taste. Some people don't like the more bitter taste of a Pilsner style beer. I'm one of them. If I walk into a bar, I ask for the darkest beer they have. If it's a Guinness, Jackpot! If it's Sam Adams, I'm still pretty happy. More often than not, it's Shiner, which, I'll drink it, but it still has a bitter taste. Then we have your IPA lovers, also not a fan, but I have witnessed a generational gap in beer preference thanks to IPAs. Alright, quick story here. I had a buddy pass away and his family held a ceremony for him, and part of it was that they got a crap ton of his favorite beer, Hopadilla. For those unaware, it's hoppy. They could have called it Easter Bunny Ale, it's that daggum hoppy. And when everyone took a drink together as a toast, I got to watch the faces of every person there over the age of 45 as they contorted into an extremely entertaining plethora of bitter beer faces.
Whoa! Bitter beer face!
Some the likes of which I have never seen before, nor do I believe I will ever witness again. Yeah, quite a few people just spit it out. All the younger people, they just drank it fine because that's what they're used to. With situational, it makes sense for Hank and the guys to drink a more Pilsner style beer that's lighter on the stomach, seeing as they're standing outside drinking it for the most part rather than being in a bar or apartment or whatever. It wouldn't surprise me if Alamo was kind of in line with Coors or Busch, which are very much beers, at least in Texas, that you drink while working outside in the heat. Alamo is, I'm guessing, more of a work beer. It certainly has the reputation of a working man's beer.
Now that we're here, it's time for a beer.
What could be more apropos? Alamo, Alamo, my one true amigo.
Whereas what Bobby enjoys is closer to, say, Blue Moon.
Blue moon of Kentucky, keep on shining.
Not a bad beer to drink sitting around in the AC, but not something I'd exactly recommend while standing outside in the heat, or, welding a new pipe fence. Bobby is right in that the competition isn't exactly what Hank thinks it is.
In Dallas, you'll be up against experienced brewers that make unique, nuanced beers that tell stories.
Bobby, beers don't need to tell stories. They just need a fridge to keep them cold.
Why does beer need a story? Because that's how you sell it. Hank's generation didn't really have to get sold on beer, or at least in a way beyond boobs and parties.
Drink, 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 drink it all, you fucking pussy! More tuxedos, more cars, more pussy, more vodka, drink, drink, drink! Please drink responsibly.
But today, when you've got a literal ocean of craft beers out there, you kind of need something to stand out. And that's where marketing comes in, and that's where stories come in. They need a hook and a bold flavor to set them apart. Otherwise, why would you pick them? I've never been a big fan of fruit with beer, even the aforementioned Blue Moon with an orange slice, though my opinion has relaxed quite a bit thanks to some offerings from Sam Adams. Haven't had it in years, but I was a fan of their blackberry wit beer. And while rewatching this episode over and over and writing this script, I realized that I hadn't drank a beer in over a year. Hey, that rhymes. So I ventured out to the local liquor store, good old Harley Cut Rate Liquor, which just happens to be next to a barbecue joint. So bringing home a six-pack became bringing home a six-pack and a pound of ribs. And y'all know damn well exactly what I paired those with.
Boy, that cheese.
So now Bobby and Hank are both brewing competing beers, doubling Peggy's chance of getting a beer named after her, at least in her mind. And we've got ourselves a good old battle of the hills. Old school versus new school, bitter versus fruity. He talks us over with the guys and Peggy in the alley. Dale not being a fan of Peggy being there, but Peggy doesn't care.
Hank, what's Peggy doing in the alley?
Well, normally I would be teaching. But now that I am retired, I have got nowhere to be. And retired Peggy is doing anything she damn well pleases.
Boomhauer brings up his stepson. I don't remember his name, so I'm just going to call him Revival Randy. And the idea of your first beer. Now, we saw Bobby's first beer.
12 years old and drinking a beer?
I didn't even like it.
Well, now you're just trying to get me mad.
And what's interesting to me about this subplot of Boomhauer sharing a beer with his stepson and it causing issues is that it's very much like a proposed plot idea known as Bobby's drinking problem, where the same thing more or less happens when Hank shares a beer with Bobby. Boomhauer does share a non-alcoholic beer with Revival Randy, leading him to drinking it with his friends, but it's simply because he wants to be more like Boomhauer.
Hey, man, that damn cycle gonna stop right now, man. I'm gonna cut you off.
No idea what you said, but I just wanted to be cool like you, Boomhauer.
He may not always be able to understand him, but Revival Randy looks up to Boomhauer. Plus, this whole thing gives us one of the moments I laughed the hardest at in the whole revival.
Yeah, man, man over near beer run now, man. Oh, man.
Seriously, that's just hilarious. Bobby gets sponsorship from the restaurant to help make his beer, though it's made rather clear that because it's being paid for by Ted Wasonasong, then it gets to be named after him. Yeah, that makes sense, but it sucks for Bobby seeing as he's doing all the work. Then again, when it comes to working in the restaurant, that's kind of par for the course. He seriously is in the same Golden Goose style position that Hank was with Buck. Hank continues working on his beer, but because it's going to require a story, he and Peggy visit a local brewery. I've been to a few places like this and they're typically pretty cool, and more often than not they have some pretty good beers. However, they are not exactly blown away by the selection that they're given. In fact, they don't like them at all, Hank pointing out that he's chewing one possibly as a nod to beer's history as liquid bread. And I gotta agree with Hank here because pretty much all the beers are trying not to taste like beer. Also, shout out to the hipster bartender there. I really do like the cut of his jib.
Excuse me, do you have any beer that tastes like beer and isn't trying hard to taste like something else?
No.
Bobby and Hank both continue working on their beers, getting feedback from their peers. I really gotta stop rhyming. Though the feedback isn't very good, and in some cases, like the frat boys, it's pretty much useless, and the alley guys aren't much better. Both groups are putting a lot of pressure on their respective brewer, and Dale actually says something here that made me just go Jesus in response, because Jesus, Dale, that's a little far.
What's Old Gun flavor?
That's Bill. He's the only one who's ever put a gun in his mouth.
It tasted like I thought it would.
The Hills continue their work. We finally get to hear a Tom Petty song actually performed by Tom Petty on the show. Though if I'm being honest, I think I used this song better myself.
You ain't tasted nothing till you've tasted a corn chip right off the line.
Oh, someday I would like to try that.
I'm gonna help you run down that dream, Bobby.
And both generations of Gribbles tell their respective member of the Hill family that they've got them covered. Though it literally means the same thing because Dale and Joseph both show up to the judge's house. And I love how they share a smoke here, proving yet again that Dale may not be Joseph's biological father, but he sure as hell is that boy's daddy. And when they think they might be getting caught, we get the other scene that made me laugh way too hard.
Damn it.
Okay, seriously? That's not just funny, that's pretty damn impressive. Bobby comes to the house because he has more laundry. He's talking a lot of smack for somebody that's drinking somebody else's orange juice, especially to the person that bought said orange juice. I do like the Hank versus Bobby dynamic in this episode. As I mentioned before, it is rather reminiscent of their dog dancing days.
I believe it's up to the judges to decide who's got the moves and who doesn't. I'll see you out on the dance floor. That's just a little taste, Dad. Ladybird.
The Gribbles, too, are also still up to their old tricks, both of them trying to rig the contest for their hill. Dale kidnaps a judge's dog and frames Hank as the person who found it, and Joseph finds out about two judges having an affair. This, of course, is the moment that Nancy and John Redcorn show up. I'm not sure if they're back together, but the show is certainly playing up like they are. Come time for judging, and Hank's beer, known as Alley Guy's beer, has no story. Now, had someone told Hank that he needed a sales pitch, I'm sure he'd have done just fine, but trying to come up with a story for his beer probably seemed like a rather alien concept.
Tradition, freshly cut lawns, respect for your elders, the roar of a crowd after a touchdown. These are the stories of Texas.
Yeah, that doesn't work, because of course it doesn't work. Don't get me wrong, I liked it, but it ain't exactly what the judges are looking for. So Hank gives a short speech about how he was too proud to admit the fact that Bobby knows more than him about some things, and that he turned what should have been a bonding experience into a competition, and then decides to pull his beer out of said competition. Bobby then does the same, coming to the same realization that Hank did, seeing as Bobby Bobby also took something that could have been bonding time with his dad and turned it into a competition, and he withdraws his beer with Song Ale. And the episode ends with Hank and Bobby still not fans of each other's beers, though they mutually agree they shouldn't have listened to their friends. And Peggy is getting drunk in a lawn chair while mixing both beers together. Yeah, that probably tastes terrible, but Peggy's probably passed beyond the point of being able to taste it anyway. So, the beer story. It's a good episode, a definite improvement from Return of the King, but that's to be expected. This was really just a classic style King of the Hill episode that stuck to the mission statement from the show's Bible rather well, being a comedy that takes its own sweet time telling small real stories about Hank and his world. That's what we get here, just good old-fashioned King of the Hill. The jokes pretty much all hit like they should. Hank and Bobby both learn important lessons about themselves and life. Hank accepts that Bobby is getting older and knows more than Hank wants to admit he does, and Bobby sees that there's nothing wrong with boring and old-fashioned if it's what makes someone happy. They both listen too much to those around them and turn their creations into beers they didn't necessarily want them to be. And it shows us that though Hank and Bobby may be very different, as Bobby puts it,
different beer, but the hops fell out of the same tree.
I also like the parallel B plot where Boomhauer bonds with Revival Randy. Yeah, the beer can smash was hilarious, but it was nice to see Boomhauer looking out for his stepson and realizing that his quote-unquote drinking problem was just because he looked up to him and wanted to be like him. See, beer can bring families together. Sometimes. I should also add, as far as the father-son stuff, that we do see that Joseph is driving John Redcorn's old Jeep, and the moments with Joseph and Dale doing what Gribbles do gave us even more father-son bonding. This one really was father-son relationship heavy, and ultimately that's what the episode is about. Not so much beer as father-son bonding. The Hills end up bonding in a roundabout way with beer, and in the episode drinking together. Boomhauer and Revival Randy bonded over the classic milestone of sharing a first beer, and the Gribbles bonded over nicotine and a shared need to do insane things to help those they care about. Dale did certainly teach Joseph how to be loyal. We all know Nancy sure as hell didn't. And if nothing else, Dale still doesn't like Peggy in the alley, and Min is still awesome.
Let's put it to a vote. Who says Peggy should stay inside with the shades drawn?
Shut up, Dale!
Thanks for watching, folks. We'll see y'all next time.
Man, all these damn ladies and kids in the alley, man. Up to Luke Jr. been asking me about wanting to drink beer. And I told my old man let me drink my first beer when I was 7, man. I'd took me out of the bike and I'd slam it right into a dang old parked car.